Hello, everyone, and welcome to our live stream. It's actually our first one for 2025, and I'm super excited, Tori, because today we are going to launch one of the coolest features in Permit. I think we got a lot of requirement to launch such a feature. And with me today, Maya, one of our senior software
Hi.
engineers. Hello, Maya. And she will help me today to introduce you to our new feature. This feature is called, as you saw in the title, Policy Guard. And with that, I want to give a little introduction to the problem domain. As you probably know, Permit is very highly focused in creating an authorization platform. We have a strong belief that evaluate policies, evaluate fine-grained authorization is a solved problem. There are a lot of great policy engines out there, OPA, OpenFGA, CEDAR, we support them all, that let you evaluate great fine-grained authorization decision. But the real thing that you need as developers is an actual way to manage it. You need a platform. This is why Permit is focusing in creating the best platform out there for developers who want and need to integrate fine-grained authorization. And the feature today is focusing on the platform. To give a short intro to the what we are bringing with the platform, so probably if you are working in a software development organization, you have a lot of applications, a lot of services, you name it. If you work in microservice architecture, then you should have maybe hundreds of services. If you work with more traditional way, your business has a lot of application. Think of a bank, so you have the end user application, you have the back office for the bankers, and you have an application for the advisors. If you're working in healthcare, you have applications for doctor, you have applications for patients, you have applications for clinic staff. If you're working in consumer, let's say Uber, they have applications for drivers, you have applications for riders. And these applications actually needs different policies, but they not always needs a different policy. The feature that we are working, if you're familiar, let's start with this one. If you are familiar with Permit, you're probably aware that we have a nice way of having, we have a nice way for projects and environment. So this is equivalent to the way that you probably your organization work with. So for every project workspace, here I am in my workspace of Madrigal Electromotive. If you're familiar, probably know that Madrigal Electromotive has multiple businesses. It has El Pollo Loco, and it has this laundry, can't remember the name. If someone remembers the name of the laundry of Madrigal Electromotive, you're more than invited to write it in the comments, no matter where you're watching us. And Lavenderia Brillante, now I remember. So it has a lot of businesses, and the same way is in Permit. You have the project, and then you have the workspace, and then you can have the project. That's the way organizations work. And to help with the software development lifecycle, you have environments. You have development, you have production, you have new cool startup, as you can see here. Each environment considered as a branch. So as a developer, as engineering leader, what you should do is having a project with a separate policy for each environment. Then you can test the policies across the environment. That's part of the platform in Permit, and you're probably familiar with that. But one of the things that one of the requirements we get the most is about having shared policies between environment. So let's talk for an example. If you're in a bank, and let's try to draw it so quickly, so you have an idea of what we are talking about. So probably, let's say that you have a bank. Let me remove this one. Okay. So you have a bank, and this bank has multiple applications, right? So this large one is the bank itself. And you have here a, let's say, self-service user application or self-service project. And here you have the ATM service, let's say. ATM. And here you have, for example, the back office. And you can model it all, of course, as projects in Permit, right? So the way that you are creating the policies is by having different
Gabriel, just
application environments.
if you can share your screen.
Yeah, let me share the diagram. Thanks for noticing. So let's say I have here back office, and I also have I don't know, saving advisor app. So I have all these application and projects in my bank, and all of them has different policies. So the self-service has policy of what screen you can see. The ATM is how much you can take in a day, and for each one of them, you are configuring a different policies. But what if you want to configure the same baseline policy for each project? So you want to achieve something like that. So here you have the base end user policy, and each of these environment, when they are created, has this baseline policy so they can start with. So until today you'll have to do it manually. You can manage, of course, all the projects with permit with your APIs, but today we are launching a feature that could enable you create fine-grained authorization in a much better and convenient way. So to summarize, what we are going to show today is a new feature that allows you create baseline policy, we call it scope, into multiple projects in your workspace, so you can guard it and make sure that each project has its own policies, and the users that work on the particular project can't actually share them. And with that, I'll move to Maya, who developed that feature, that to show us a quick demo of the new feature, or maybe not quick.
Thank you, Gabriel. So give me 1 second to share my screen. See. Okay. So I think we will start with the postman calls. So for now, I will say Policy Guard is API feature, I will call it. We're planning to develop the UI in the next few months. So I think we'll start with the base of the feature. Let's start with create our scope. So I have here a post request for scopes, and for this example, I will call the scope 1.
So
And
scope is actually the baseline policy that is shared for all the projects, right? So you can define a scope, and with this scope, then we'll create policies that share for all the projects in the workspace, right?
yeah, so the scope will, we can look at the scope as an object that will contain the projects we want to guard their policy. And we also have inside the scope the rules we want to be on the project inside the scope. So for now, I just created the scope, and we can see we have the key, the ID, and the organization. It's basically the workspace the scope is relevant to. So now we'll add a project to our scope. So then I will see the permission I will add in the next few calls. So for now, we just do a post to scope 1 associate, and we can see the we got the result. So now if I will do a get to the scope I just created, I will get the scope and the project under the scope. So this project is the project I just added. For now, we have only one project, but of course we can add more.
So the
And
scope is like a project that is baseline of all the project that you assign to it. Is that a good
yeah,
way to explain that?
yeah,
Great. But project
exactly.
without probably environment, because it has only one baseline.
Sorry.
It a project without environments. You can separate. You only have one source of truth for the baseline policies.
Yes.
I think that's super powerful, because one of the challenges that we meet the most when chatting with users that try to enable fine-grained authorization or to centralize external authorization, one of the questions that they have is how we authorize the authorization itself. So we probably know our organization structure, but if we are now externalizing and centralizing the authorization configuration, we need to understand that a developer can't change it just by hand. And I think this is very powerful here, that because we are actually having the scope, and the scope is protected, and we can probably, even because it's an API feature, and I think it's a feature that is very fit for API feature, because if you think on organization, the way that modern cloud native software work is that we are giving usually a service account the root permissions, or kind of root list privilege permission, let's use this term. And this service account with the list privilege permission has permission to set up the baseline, right? That's the way infrastructure work today. If you think about like infrastructure of your Kubernetes clusters or infrastructure in your deployment, you have the service account, they can configure the system, but they can't do much more than that. And this feature gives you the exact way. So you have in your SDLC, in your CI/CD maybe, the baseline configuration that is based on your service account that do the API call to set the baseline scope for your project. And of course, you can create multiple scope. For now, we support one scope, but soon we'll have general availability for multiple scope. So you can manage the baseline policy and the authorization for authorization in the way that you manage all the configuration. I think that's a huge jump in our way to enable cloud native organization with this fine-grained authorization journey.
Exactly. It's a little bit funny, but we have authorization, but then we need authorization to our authorization. So as a developer, this feature make our life a little bit easier. So we don't need to worry about like important permission to be deleted or to be like moved between environments. You have like one place, like you said, one source of truth. So each rule we will have in the scope. So we will get to this in the next call. But each rule you will have will be on the project you will put in the scope. So once you put a new project inside the scope, you can like relax and be sure the policy will be guarded.
Yeah.
So
And now we are continuing to a practical example of that. And for
yeah,
that, we choose a banking example. I'll let Maya set up the rules, but see how cool it could be for fintech environment that you all understand, your bank account.
yeah. So in this demo, we took like a bank account for the demo. I will start with creating like a two simple RBAC permission. It will be just like a role on resource, and I will guard action on this role. So I just will do this, and let's make another rule so we can see everything.
I think
Oh,
one
and
of the
let
cool
me,
thing that we see here is that we simplify the way that you create policy rule. You don't need to create a rule, a resource, an action, a role, etc., etc. By one API call, you can set role-based access control and attribute-based access control rules, and that imply the baseline policy. So it even make it simpler to create the setup. And with that, let's discuss on the policy that Maya just created. This policy, if you think about a banking system, Maya, can you move it to a table so we can see it in one picture?
yeah,
If you
of
think on
course.
a banking system, as the one that lead authorization in your organization, you probably want that every project, every service, every policy for a project that is actually touched with the end user, with the bank account owners, has a baseline policy on what they can do, and has a baseline policy of what a beneficiary can do. And see how cool every new project and every new environment that Maya now will open will get all these baseline policies. So every new project that you want to enable your developers to create that is actually a banking project, end user banking project, will get this baseline policy. So Maya, I am now a developer and I need to create a new service that is touching the end users. Let show me how I create this policy, and we can see that creating environment will probably have this baseline policy. So you see the new demo environment now has this baseline policy. And now that super powerful for organization that want to go in this journey of centralized external authorization, but they think, how would I propagate it to my organization? See how baseline policies and the policy guard is something that can help. And Maya, if you can show them that this policy is actually guarded by the name
Yeah.
of policy guard. So the developer who have access to this environment, if they, for example, will try,
Ah,
let me remove this.
yeah. Sorry. I
Yeah,
will do it. I will do it again. Just if we will
I
try to delete
yeah, but
the
I
guard
need to
as
find a
well.
way to
Mm,
remove this. I need to find a way to
okay. They
remove
will
this
need to
one.
trust us. You
I,
have
I, I I recommend that you make your window a little maybe smaller. No,
yeah,
that will not
of
help.
course.
Let me see how
Wait.
can I remove that.
I
Ta-ta-ta.
think let me see.
But anyway, as you can see, yeah, that's great. That's great. You
Yeah,
just
but
move
I
it
just
aside.
now I can't see the deletes.
Oh,
Okay, I hope it will work. Ah, I have a better idea.
yeah, that's great. Yeah. So if no, but here you need to click the. Oh, great. So Maya is trying to delete the role, and as you can see, it failed to delete the role because
Yeah.
this role is guarded. So this is a very powerful feature. But policy guard is not about only create policies. It's only about creating a baseline for your policy schema. And with that, Maya, let's continue to the attribute-based access control baseline policies.
Yeah, so Policy Guard also support ABAC policy. So here we will create a resource set for a large transaction. So in
Mhm.
this case, we are talking about bank. So we will do a send, create. Let's create another one for small transactions. Eight, and now if we will go back, we supposed to wait. Sorry.
Yeah, let's go to the right project.
Mm-hmm. Let me just 1 second.
So what Maya is actually doing now, think about banking systems. Usually what you have there is a strict compliance regulation that require you to have baseline policies. So one of these example is that you have a regulation of what's so-called a small transaction. What is a small transaction? What is a large transaction? And you need to make sure as a banking system that you enforce this compliance everywhere in your organization. So as Maya showed here, we just creating an ABAC resource set of large transaction and small transaction. And now this enable developer to create a lot of flows on top of that. Let's think about that if, for example, we have users in the US, that we have some regulation that enforce us, for example, to do one-time password or to have strong authentication before we are letting them do large transaction, then they can extend it. So Maya, let's create another action for the transaction. Let's say we have another action that call create, let's say.
You want to guard it?
No, I want to
Like,
say I want to show how we are extending the policy, the baseline policy. How can we
mm,
extend it for more policy rules? So we have the action of the small transaction. The transaction is the small transaction are guarded. No one can change them, but they can extend them. So if here, for example, we create another action that call, for example, create, we can create more policy rules on top of that, right? So if we go now to the ABAC rules and let's create more, let's say, user set that call a US bank owner, a user set of a
Oh,
US bank
sorry.
owner. I think we do not have the attribute, so we not fake that, right? US
What?
account owner. I mean, let's
US.
say US account owner,
Mm-hmm.
and let's have a condition group. We haven't created a user attribute, so let's just put an
We
empty
will have the
condition.
base. Yeah.
Yeah, let's put a role contains US or something like that. It's just for the example.
Mm-hmm.
It will just write something. But I assume that we have US account owners, and of course, you can create the real condition by yourself. And then we can create also Europe account owner. For example, here, let's create another user set of Europe account owner. And then let's go to the, after that, we can go to the policy screen and can see how we can extend it. So we can change the US account owner policy and the EU account owner policy. But what we can't do, we can't override regulation. We can't override what is a small transaction, what is a large transaction. Let's go to the policy editor and let's check, for example, a custom fine-grained policy for this particular. So let's say US account can't create. EU account can create both transaction, large and small, but US account can
Like you
create
mean
only.
about this one?
No, so this one they are not allowed to do it. The US user can't create large transaction. They can create only small transaction.
Mm-hmm.
But EU can create all kind of the transaction,
But
large and
you
small.
perfect. I will use this one.
Yeah, great. So let's look at this example. We can save the
Oh,
changes.
yeah. No.
Probably no, we can't change the rule, but probably with we can extend it. But if, for example, we are trying to remove the resource, then we'll probably not be able to remove the resource. The small transaction and the large transaction amount will be strong as a stone
Yeah.
in our system, and no one will be able to remove or change that. And that's a
Yeah.
great example of how we can enable even developers not only with enforce them, this is your baseline policy. We can enable them extend this policy. And we believe this extension really can help for organizations that want to create new accounts and new organizations to enable fine-grained authorization with their application. It really can be helpful for them. Maya, I know that you work on that feature, and I know that our audience today is developers, and probably as you know, creating policy in permit, all the policy that you create here, permit backend is translating into policy as code. We translate it to Rigo code or Cedar code or Open FGA tuples, whatever you choose. Probably most of you choose the OPA, but we are generating code, and this policy synchron, and then we are also synchronizing to all your PDP, and this probably take a time. And I know, Maya, that you have some significant challenges that you deal with when you develop that. So maybe you can tell us a little on your way to develop this policy guard feature.
Yeah, so it was kind of, I don't know if to say big, but it was a pretty interesting feature for me to develop. Um, it's actually in this feature for the first time, I truly pass what a new customer on permit need to do to define the permission, sync data, um, use the PDP. So in this feature, I think we're probably will talk about it in a next live stream or in some docs we will have. But we use dog fooding. We like to call it in this feature. It's mean we use permit inside this feature. We created a new PDP inside a permit environment, and we use it to force the policy of the policy guard, like who can create new rule, and if some role is guarded, so you can't delete or edit, but you can create new role. So we actually have like permit workspace for this feature, and it was pretty interesting as a developer in permit to use permit as a customer. And I found a lot of good documentation we have in the company, and it's make us to create even more good documentation to our feature. And I actually use how I actually forgot the word. I created all the environment in code, like the policy. Gabriel, remind me the word.
Yeah, it's like the infrastructure is code, like configuration is code.
No, the like all the policy I model it to code. So
Oh,
yeah,
yeah, that explained well.
okay. Um, so we can create this workspace if we will need in the future. So yeah, it was a little bit challenging, but it was pretty fun to do this feature, and I hope it will help other developer to manage their permission in the organization and make sure it's safe and guarded.
Yeah,
Um, so I will say we also
yeah.
created really good documentation for this feature, and we post it in our Slack community.
Mhm.
And we have pretty good redoc for this feature, so you can see
Yeah.
all the API calls. Of course, I didn't show it in the demo, but of course, you can delete rule or remove associate, like disassociate projects from scope or delete scope and create a new one. Once, of course, you will remove the rule, you can change the permission again, and yeah.
Yeah, I think it's also a good. I think it is also a good opportunity to mention that we have a new API Explorer, the Scalar Explorer. This is a very cool open source project that we decided to move from the old Redoc. You can literally check the request, put your API key here, and do a lot of API calls from it. The URL is api.permi.io /scalar. I'll put it in a QR code now, so you can scan it and get it and start playing with the permit API sooner than later. And as you can see here, as Maya mentioned, you can list the scopes that you have, you can create the rules, and you have all the documentation here. And you can, of course, play with it and create your own API keys and API rules and everything related to the policy guard. So again, that's a good chance to mention that we have a new API Explorer, and you are more than invited to try it. All thanks to Dan, who is not here to manage that. And I also want to discuss the way I think it's internal, but again, our audience are developers. Let's talk about the use that you did with queues and Celery with implementing that. That's one of the first projects in Permit where we have to worry about the time that transactions can take and putting them on a queue for people who don't want to wait for synchronized API calls. So, do you want to put some light on it?
Yeah, so I will just like mention quick that we use Celery in this project, as Gabriel said. And of course, we decide to use Celery in this feature because we thought about the scenario. You have like multiple projects under the scope, and these multiple projects have multiple environments under it, and then you have like 100 rule you need to guard on these all environments. So this request, once you like add a new project or add a new rule could take a time. So we want to do it like in a async way. So you will not need to worry about how much time this call take. And yes, so we use Celery, and you could see the task ID when you post the request. And yes, it's supposed to make the request fast and easy.
Yeah. I think to summarize that, we are now take another step forward with the ability to enable organizations, not only the single developer who want to try and fine grain authorization, but organizations that really need to implement the fine grain authorization with the thinking of what I'm allowing my developers to do, what I'm allowing my business function to do, what I'm allowing my security engineers to do. And that's literally the next step that we can go. And really hope you're probably permit user and watching us. We actually invited only permit users. We didn't invite all the community to that because that's really helpful for permit user, but maybe we should invite everyone. I think is a great step for the platform. And that's, of course, connected with all the other great side of the permit platform, the policy schema configuration, the no-code editor, the all the data sync that we are allowing with Opal, the GitOps mechanism, the code generation, and more than that. Not now the place to to expand on it. And yeah, really hope you'll find it useful. And again, as every time, if you have any question and comment, we can leave some time to it now. I'll say that no matter where you're, actually today we started also to live stream on Instagram and TikTok. So if you are there, welcome. We are happy that you are with us. If you have any kind of question or comments, you have the time to ask them now, and we'll try to answer them.
Meanwhile, I will say that Terraform, it's the word I look for. It was actually nice to use another feature we have in Permit. I wrote all the policy for
Mhm.
this workspace we use in the policy guard in Terraform. So in case we will want to create another workspace and of course it's like the safe way to save your permission once you will want to create another workspace with this policy. You can just use it to create all the objects and the permission. So I use it. And of course, we have great documentation for using Terraform in permit. And yes, as Gabriel say, we are available in our Slack community. We are happy to help and answer any question you will have on this feature or on any feature we have.
A question. So you mentioned Terraform. Is that possible to configure the baseline policy with Terraform or only with the APIs?
No, so the base you need to create with the
With the
API, so
API.
it will
Mhm.
be guarded. But I mentioned
And then
about
you can
like,
expand.
yeah, of course, like the other policy. I use it in the workspace I created for the policy guard. Like you need
Mhm.
to define that if it's a role and it's guarded, so you can't edit it. So we have like permission for this policy. So I created a Terraform file for this policy.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that could be really helpful. And I see that we do not get any kind of comment. I see some chat in the Slack community about the policy guard. So if you really want to continue chat with us, I'll just put the QR code here. This is a QR code that can let you join our Slack community with any question, anything that you fall that you missed. If you want our help with setting your own policy guard and start work with us, we are, as always, super happy to help. And I want to thank for everyone joining us today to this feature launch. As I say at the beginning, for me, I am a like long years in the policy engines world, and I truly believe the thing that developer missing is the platform. And every step that we do in our way to the platform is something that I'm really happy with, and hope that we can create more and more platform powerful features for developers and companies and products who want to enable fine-grained authorization. And I also, of course, want to thank to Maya, who works on that feature and led that feature, and also give us a great banking demo today. I think there are a lot of banks and fintech customers for Permit and users. So really appreciate your business, and see you all next time. Thank you.
Thank you, Gabriel.